pick and roll with it. Make a pick and roll with it. Betting weekly. Fast break from coast to coast and way downtown. From coast to coast and way downtown. From coast to coast and way downtown.
Welcome into this Tuesday edition of Betting Weekly Fast Break. I am Doug Kezirian alongside Albert Nguyen, also known as Analytics Capper. And we have obviously some NBA Finals to discuss. Game 3 tomorrow night in Indianapolis for the first time in this series. We're also going to break down some WNBA, carrying or extending our conversation from yesterday where we've seen some line movement since we discussed it yesterday. Albert, good to have you on. I know you had a nice day yesterday on the Diamond, and now we're talking some hoops here.
I did. Good day on the diamond, and then we hit our game 3 bet in the Stanley Cup. So no complaints there. I'm looking forward to this show, Doug, because I'm not sure who I like for game 3 of the NBA Finals.
So maybe we'll flush it out in that dialogue and have a collaborative discussion. But you have some positive juju, if you will. You had the over in the Diamondbacks Mariners game last night, 4-0 in the ninth, and somehow get 12 runs. So a nice, fortunate win. And we got to remember those. I was talking about it on Saturday night. I had a bad beat on a decision in the UFC, but I got to remember the lucky ones I've had in a sport that certainly has some questionable judging score by the scorecards.
Yeah, you got to remember all the lucky wins too. Unfortunately, our brain is not wired that way, right? We talk about all the bad losses, all the bad beats. I mean, Scott Van Pelt made an amazing segment about bad beats and tough losses like that. But with that said, I mean, you have to also remember all the good times. And that was a nice win last night. I thought they would get there, much easier than that. But at the end of the day, the ticket cashed, and that's all that matters.
Exactly. That is all that matters. There are no style points in this. We want to get you involved in the conversation. Please comment in the YouTube section, comment section, because we'll answer your questions live here on the show, whether it be direct questions about a specific bet or getting our opinion on something, things along those lines. So please join the conversation. And don't forget about the Betting Weekly newsletter. Tons of information, like 30 plus pages, links to this podcast and other Bet Rivers podcasts. Also, Bet Rivers betting odds, breakdowns of a bunch of games from the fellas, whether it be soccer previews, tennis previews, and we just had the French Open with some thrilling matches. So a lot of good content out there. Go sign up, bettingweeklystudios.com. So the Thunder bounced back in game 2 emphatically, win by double digits. Got a little hairy with the cover, but they got there. So now the series price back up to minus 560 now at Bet Rivers as the series heads to Indiana. And remember, the Pacers do have home court advantage. 3 of the next 5 are on their home court, and they're 5.5-point home dogs as well. Anything jump out to you as we have a Thunder series price of 590 in the comeback plus 400?
Yeah, I think that's why I really love doing this show, Doug, is nothing right now, as of right now, really jumps out to me. But one thing that I would be cautious about is every time we think the team has the upper hand against Indiana, whether it's, New York, whether it's the Cleveland, who is the number 1 seed in the East, Indiana comes back strong. And I'm not saying that's going to happen in game 3. I'm not saying they're going to win that game, but I wouldn't be surprised, Doug, if they go back to OKC 2-2, right? And at that point, it's going to be basically a best of 3 series, which is what we love as sports fans and sports bettors. But I think the one that, I've been harping on from an OKC standpoint since, I don't know, the second round maybe, is the more Alex Caruso plays, the more I'm going to bet his props. So that includes rebounds, assists, points, whether that's combined and collaborative or individually. And then the one that I really love is stocks, so steals and blocks. And I'm going to keep mentioning that every single show because he's always, 2 to 3 stocks every single game during these postseason.
Okay, so we'll get into those props, but the series spreads, you saw them on the screen. Obviously, if you don't want to lay the 590 or take plus 400, if you don't think the Pacers can actually pull it off, but there's ways to think it's going to be a closer series. I agree with you. I do think this series heads back to OKC 2-2. I'm likely going to be backing the team that loses game 3 in game 4. But right now, we have some options in order to get there. So if we don't think it's going to go 7, Thunder minus 1.5 games is minus 157. Now, if I think it's going to be 2-2, why not just wait, right? At minus 1.5. But and I don't think they take both games in Indiana. They can for sure. Under 5.5 plus 160. I'm reluctant. So if I think it's going, if it's going to go 2-2, then it's obviously going to go over 5.5. But minus 225 is too rich for an over under of over 5.5 games, especially when I have under 5.5 already bet for the series. So nothing jumps out to me in the series prices. Pacers to get one more game at least, so plus 2.5, is minus 278. It's a little too rich for me. I wouldn't be stunned if the Pacers lose the next 3 games. I don't think it's going to happen, but I wouldn't be stunned. I'd be surprised. Anything stand out here on the spreads?
Yeah, before the series started, right, I told you I was on the Thunder minus 2.5 games. So I expected 4-1, for them to clinch it back at home. It's still a possibility. So instead of doing the series bet or even the spread, maybe if you want to go correct score, right, correct wins, I think there's some value there. If it goes 7, I don't know, Doug. If it goes 7, I kind of like the Pacers, right? They'll be
Yeah.
playing with house money at that point. All the pressure would be on the home team against OKC, very young OKC team. We know Shea's going to do his thing at 26 years old, but we don't know if the other players are going to step up in a game 7 for the NBA Finals. So I would do something like maybe a Pacers 4-1, or sorry, an OKC 4-1 or Pacers 4-3, like just to make it a little interesting.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I wouldn't overreact to what OKC did against the Nuggets in game 7. Remember, Aaron Gordon was hurt. Denver, not a deep team, was running on fumes at that point. And give the Thunder defense credit. They played great. But I think this game would unfold much differently if they got to a 7th game. I think the next 2 games are going to be so fascinating. I think the Pacers crowd will be electric. Our own Wes Reynolds, our resident Hoosier, will be out there in Indiana. We'll have boots on the ground. He's going to go to one of those games, I believe. We'll check in with him later in the week. I think he's on the show ahead of game 4 on Friday here on Betting Weekly Fast Break. And just a reminder, we are Monday through Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. We also launched Betting Weekly Hardball, a new baseball handicapping show. That too is Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. So nothing for me. Sounds like nothing for you on the series price at this juncture. Faint hopes for under 5.5 games or minus 2.5 for the Thunder to get hot. Series player props. We did pretty well with these, all the guests and myself coming into this series. We liked Hartenstein at plus 450 to be the leading rebounder. We liked Halliburton maybe not to be the assist favorite. Some liked SGA. Some liked even a flyer on Jalen Williams at 50-1. That ticket's not dead yet. Now, Halliburton's still the favorite, but he's not the leader, so he's only minus 230 right now. Figures to bounce back in this next game. Any series player props? Siakam's now the betting favorite for rebounding, when before the series, Holmgren was minus 121, and we were all puzzled. Now Holmgren's plus 400. So there's some opportunities here. Like I said, I have Jalen Williams at 50-1. He's now 12-1 to be the assist leader. I believe he's the current leader in assists right now. So,
Yeah,
he's one behind Halliburton here.
Okay. Yeah, so let's start with rebounds. So right now, both Pascal Siakam and Isaiah Hartenstein are tied at 17 rebounds. Chet Holmgren, you mentioned the favorite heading into this series. He's only at 12. We don't expect him to have more than 6 each game. I think you're going to be. Doug's been killing the Chet Holmgren under rebounds, and that's such a sharp look. I'll say this: Game 1, Isaiah Hartenstein only played 17 minutes, still grabbed, I don't know, 8 or 9 rebounds, something like that. And then they lost the game, right? And everybody was talking about how it was a terrible, lineup change. Why would you change your starting lineup before game 1? You're the number 1 seed. And then he played game 2 a little bit more, just 22 minutes. So 5 more minutes. So, and they won very convincingly. So from a logical standpoint, you would think, okay, play Isaiah Hartenstein more equals an OKC Thunder win. So I would expect them, unless they get blown out or they do the blowing out, I expect Hartenstein to get more minutes as the series goes on. So that's my long-winded way of answering that. I think it's for me, my favorite bet right now from a series perspective is that Isaiah Hartenstein rebounds, just because Pascal is playing at the peak of in terms of like the minutes, right? He's not going to be playing anymore. Obviously, one or two more bounces can go his way, and he could grab a couple more rebounds. But I just like to play the odds, and I just think Isaiah Hartenstein from 17 minutes to 22 minutes, maybe mid 20s, high 20s in game 3. I just think he's going to have way more opportunity to grab more rebounds.
Yeah, you raise a good point. Daggs, the coach of OKC, did play the double big lineup a little bit. I want to say third quarter, so maybe extra minutes there for Hartenstein. And Holmgren lurks around the 3-point line. I just think there were some fluky rebounds he got, and I was able to get my over 6.5 and over 7.5 rebounds, and then go cash and get the heck out of Dodge. I'm not touching, and I think Holmgren could get some more rebounds. There were some opportunities that his teammates took them away, but hey, those happen every game. I mean, I think guys like Dort and some other dudes are more aggressive to the ball, and Holmgren's got some passivity that I don't love. He's tough when he's in the paint and things like that, offensively and defensively, guarding a big, but he's okay letting rebounds go to teammates and when you're betting on stuff. So I agree. I mean, I have a Hartenstein plus 450. Don't need to add to that. If he were starting and playing more minutes, I would. But the fact that it looks like Daggs is going to keep him in that regard. And then with the, I wouldn't hate a Holmgren plus $4 bet if you think there's going to be some regression to his 8.5 prop or whatever. But I don't love it, because there's a few other ways you can lose, like you mentioned Siakam, you mentioned Hartenstein. So I think the market's probably right, but I would agree there's a little value on Hartenstein just because his MO is assists on offense and then crashing the boards and maybe some putbacks. But I mentioned yesterday my favorite prop for game 3 is under 7.5 points. So I'm already on that because he's so focused on dishing and dribble handoffs, but he is crashing the boards as well.
I like that a lot because not only is he crashing the offensive rebounds and grabbing those, like you mentioned, he's just dishing it back out to the perimeter. So, and even if he were to grab an offensive rebound and go for a tip, you know, pretty much a high chance of possibility that he misses it and grabs another rebound, right? So those are opportunities to, get rebounds in bunches. That's what happens with these big men is they get like one or two offensive rebounds and then you see them being super active and aggressive for the rest of the game. It's really dependent on how the game starts out. I expect the pace of game 3 to be higher than 1 and 2. So I would see more opportunities for rebounds, more opportunities for assists, and definitely more opportunities for threes. Both teams are shooting, mediocre from 3. Like Indiana is actually below average in terms of threes made per game right now in the first 2, and I expect them to kind of up that productivity. So I like I said, I like the pace to increase, which is going to increase the rest of the statistical.
All right, so we'll get into the side and total because I want to pick your brain there. But what about player to record the most assists? Again, this is not moving forward in the series; it's total. So the current tallies of through games 1 and 2 do matter, and that's why our graphics team did help everyone out, put those numbers on the screen. I actually thought, what was McConnell like before the series, like 150 to 1? I actually threw it out there as like not the worst bet.
Mhm.
Nemhard, I did not see coming. So he's in the mix. You figure Halliburton, is there value right now at minus 230 with Halliburton? I know he hasn't completely delivered, and he's probably going to score a little more in game 3, but man, it's tempting considering he was what, minus 500 or something coming into this series to have the most assists.
Yeah, I mean, Doug, you and I have been around long enough to realize like minus 200 shouldn't scare the better,
Right.
right? Like it's based on value and based on expected value, right? When it comes to Halliburton, we know when he comes back home, the ball is going to be in his hands a lot more. That's check 1. And check 2, usually when you come back home, your role players shoot a lot better. So those passes that he's throwing out to Neesmith and Nemhard and Miles Turner that were rimming in and out in games 1 and 2 might be falling in games 3 and 4. So I actually think there's great value with Pascal Siak, or sorry, with Tyrese Halliburton with the assist leader. And that's not only backing Tyrese because I just know his usage in terms of assist opportunities are going to be high, but that's also fading the rest of the players that are part of this discussion, right? They're more focused on whether it's 3 and D, so catching and shooting. They're more focused on rebounding. They're more focused on, drawing fouls, where it's with Shea or Jalen Williams. So I think even at this price, Doug, I still like Tyrese Halliburton, to answer your question.
Yeah, I'm going to make an official play, but right before I do that, what do you think about this lower leg injury? He said he's fine. Carlisle conceded he has some discomfort. Look, no one's 1,000% healthy at the end of the season in the finals, but um, any concern there that he's got a little nicked up at all?
No, not truly concerned, unless it's like your knee or something that's going to affect his quickness. I think he's crafty enough to get around his guy, which would draw the second defender, and then his opportunity to either kick it out for a three or lob it at the rim to Miles Turner, or even Thomas Bryant has been playing pretty good basketball recently. So I'm not too worried about it. And like you said, everybody at this point is not 100%. And Tyrese is the type of player that doesn't rely too much on explosiveness anyways, right? He's able to get his shot off even though it's a low release. He's able to hit runners in the lane even though he's not explosive jumping. So yeah, I'm not too worried about it. In fact, if it slows him down, I don't know, let's quantify it by 5 or 10%, it gives him the opportunity to actually spread the ball around even more. So
Yeah, no, it's a good point. Um, And it's not like he's not going to play or anything silly like that. So I think you raised a good point with the regression of some of these other guys. Like McConnell's probably not going to be one or two back of Halliburton a few games. And this is what we touched on in the series. Like sometimes these guys might be good flyers on individual games
yeah.
to be the assist leader. Now you're not going to get 50-1 like you had get for Jalen Williams to be the assist leader for the series, but it's a little bit more winnable of a wager when he just outperforms one game, the sort of the expectations and things like that, rather than an entire series. So I am going to add minus 230 for Halliburton to be the assist leader throughout the entire NBA Finals. He has a 1 assist lead over 2 guys, as we showed you on the graphic. But I just think that's the smart way to do it. I think you raised a good point, Albert. It's a nice reminder that shouldn't be scared at minus 200 or minus $2 and change. Sometimes there is value. And I think now's the time to pounce. And hey, role players play well at home. So maybe those passes from Hallie will find shooters' hands who actually do make more shots, which they did in game one impressively. So let's go to the side in total. And you mentioned you think the pace will be a little higher. So we have 5.5 now, 228.5. It was a lucky over in game two with 130 points in the second half. So tough beat on the under if you had it. But 5.5 feels a little rich. For me, it's Pacers or pass. Any read here on the side or total for you?
It's also Pacers or pass for me, but I'm not going to make that official play. It's a lean right now. I'm going to go the over. I think the over is going to be a play for me. I am very confident that the pace is going to be higher through the last 4 games at home for Indiana. So 3 of those were against the Knicks and then Cleveland. 3 of those 4 have gone over and flown over. So I like Indiana at home. I mentioned some of the variables that encourage that. Role players shooting better, pace being higher. I think they're going to get a pretty good whistle, right? If I want to be politically correct. I think both teams are going to be able to get to the free throw line. How about that? So I like free throw shooting to be good, 3-point shooting to get a nice uptick just because of the pace being increased. You'll get a couple more open looks every quarter. And yeah, I'm going to make the over 228, right? Is what we see at Bet Rivers. Yep.
228.5. It says on the graphic, and I think the app right now. But so you think there's going to be not the free throw merchant stuff of SGA, but look, sometimes the home team, it's not shady officiating. It's the ball finds energy. The
Mhm.
guys who are playing with more urgency and desperation initiate contact, driving to the rim, and that's really what it's more of a reflection. Now, don't get me wrong. Over the years, we've definitely had some funny business back in the day, David Stern's NBA, if you will. Teams down 2-0, but I think this is just going to be a Pacers team initiating more contact. I think Halliburton's going to get to the paint more, where he was seemingly allergic to the paint, definitely in the first half for
Yeah.
most of the game two. So I agree. I think the Pacers will get their looks and things like that. And again, I've said this so many times. The Pacers are not a finesse team. They have some dudes with an edge, and that's Matherin, that's Neesmith, that's McConnell. Even they are willing to muck it up, and they showed that throughout the Eastern Conference playoffs. And Halliburton's as tough as nails too, even though slight of build. So I can see that. I was leaning under. and looking that way. But yeah, I would I'm off the under thanks to you. So okay, so we'll make your first official play over 228.5.
Yeah, and guys like Obi Toppin, who came off a really
Mhm.
great game in game one, but shot 1 for 8 in game two. Obviously, Matherin had a nice bounce back in game two, but those are the guys that you would expect to have better games at home. TJ McConnell, like you said, who had a great first half of game one, then a good game two. These guys are all, I mean, they're the Eastern Conference champions for a reason, right? It's
Yeah.
not like they lucked their way to the finals. They've beaten really good teams. They played really, they've executed great down the stretch. And I think OKC, the reason why I like the over so much, Doug, is we know OKC can beat teams in a myriad of ways, right? They can muck it up themselves and they can barrage from threes, right? So I like I like the Pacers to push the pace, and OKC is going to be more than happy to run with them. So I like the over.
Okay. And uh question for you, because I've said it, but I haven't asked any of the guests this. We know the Nuggets went 7. We know they had the best player in the world, arguably with Jokic. Are the Thunder the best? Sorry, are the Pacers the best team the Thunder have faced this postseason?
You would have to say yes. You would have to say
Yeah.
yes. They're in the finals for a reason. I think the Pacers, although they got, there's fortunate breaks along every single finals run, right? Series one, they played against a Bucks team without Dame, but even with Dame, I don't think the Bucks were gonna make that series competitive because they played zero defense. Second round, obviously with Darius Garland, Evan Mobley dealing with injuries, but even when they came back, Indiana didn't give them any room, right? And they should get credit for taking care of business against the number one seed in the East. And even when those guys are not playing at 100%, Indiana didn't give them any leeway, right? That's really important. And then Knicks, everybody loved the Knicks in the conference finals because of the way the Knicks played, the way that they had dominated Boston even prior to Jason Tatum's injury. And Indiana was able to out physical them and were able to play defense without fouling. And that's really important. And I think Indiana is the best opponent that that OKC has faced. And I think that's why it's gonna go maybe six games.
Yeah, I think they are. Sometimes we get too caught up on whoever the last team is the best team, kind of like the Super Bowl or whatever. But sometimes the bracket or the conference is skewed a certain way. I mean, I know when those Warriors teams swept the Cavs in the finals, like the Rockets were the best team. Like the Rockets in 2018 took the Warriors to
Mm,
7 games
rough.
in the conference finals, and then the Cavs were swept. So it wasn't an indictment on LeBron. I mean, he only had Kevin Love as his running mate, but so if someone said the Nuggets were the best team, I certainly wouldn't argue because it was only in the second round. I think it's all about just who the matchups are. But I do think this Pacers team is still underrated.
Yeah.
But the Nuggets shot above their weight. They had a fluky game one win as well. So those are very kind of mirror images. And then they won game two in that series, I think by like 40. So all right. So no side or total. Sorry, you're on the over, but no side play, but you like and myself lean. We'll get into props in just a moment, but I want to remind everyone of how much other good stuff we have going on at the Bet Rivers Network. Betting Weekly Game Bet Match with Nigel Seeley and Sean Calvert. That was released today, discussing round of 16, start of grass court season. So obviously we had the French Open this past couple weeks, but now there's other tournaments going on. There's good betting angles. So, certainly always good betting opportunities and not just, the big majors and grand slams. I want to talk about props. And Steve from Lynn chiming in on the YouTube channel, the comment section. Hartenstein over rebounds, under points is plus 310 parlayed. Kind of like that one. All right. So I really like the under, and I've been on his over rebounds. So why not parlay them and get a little plus 310? You touched on Hartenstein being the leading rebounder in the series. What do you make of this? I'm on under 7.5 points. I love it. I
I
just think
like
he's
that a
running
lot.
around looking for assists. So this is a
Yeah,
sharp angle from Steve.
yeah, great job, Steve. Putting two bets together and getting a plus 310 there. That's really smart because I think we both agree that Hartenstein's going to play more minutes as the series goes on, especially game three tonight, which I expect Indiana to really go out aggressively, whether that's shooting a lot of threes, attacking the offensive rebounds. You're going to need Isaiah Hartenstein, just because he keeps everybody on that defense for OKC kind of even keel. He and Caruso, and that's why I like those two players so much. But yeah, it makes a lot of sense for me. And I have no read on the points, but I think the way that Doug mentioned how he's focused on grabbing boards and then dishing it out or getting the assists. I think that's a pretty good look. I like it.
He was under 7.5 points was minus 139 yesterday on the show, and I officially made it a play. It's now minus 150, so it's getting a little rich out there. So it pays to be listening every day, not just on game day. But 6.5 is minus 110, so it's come down basically a full point. It's like the new market is 6.5. I would play 6.5 minus 110. The extra point, I know he gets free throws and fouls, and every little point matters, but it's pretty juicy at 150. So I like under 6.5 minus 109 if you were to get involved. And Steve from Lynn was saying that as well. Lemon Drop has a comment. We'll get to the WNBA momentarily, but Albert, I want to ask you what props do you have circled or want to make official for tomorrow night's game 3?
Yeah, there's two guys that I'm focused on right now is Nemhard and also TJ McConnell. The reason why I'm focused on the Pacers players is I think you guys can get a read of the side that I most likely will lean on is the Pacers. And the fact that I'm on the over is very, I would say, correlated to the Pacers being successful tonight. I like Nemhard over 1.5 threes. If you don't like that as much, because I think he had like 5 or 6 attempts and only made one in game 2. I think there's a little regression there. Or Nemhard over 11.5 points. And the reason why I like Nemhard in this series and a little bit in the Denver OK series too, but for those who don't know, there's a lot of Team Canada national players on the court, right? We have Dort, we have Shea, we have Nemhard. These guys practice with each other every summer. They're comfortable. You saw Nemhard in game 1 break down Shea with a double crossover step back 3. When was the last time Shea was ever done up like that? And Nemhard did it to him. So Nemhard's not scared of the moment, is what I'm trying to say. He also sees his friends and his colleagues on the other side that he wants to beat. So he's going to be ultra aggressive. So I like either the over 1.5 threes or over 11.5 points. The other guy, TJ McConnell, I just love this guy from an energy perspective. And, when he comes back home, he just feeds into that crowd. And I like TJ McConnell over 6.5 points as well. I wouldn't do both, to be honest, because you run the risk of going 1-1 or maybe 0-2. But pick your favorite player of those two, and then just kind of zero in on his props. For me, is Nemhard.
So you're keeping an eye on those. Yeah, I have a buddy who's been betting McConnell throughout these playoffs over 5.5 combined rebounds plus assists. So not the points, but whether it's rebounds or assists, his energy off the bench and that second unit to start the second quarter has been really rewarding. It got there in game 2. Game 1, it fell short. He was scoring too much, frankly,
Yeah.
and not passing. I think the juice makes it a no play. It's minus 139 at last check at Bet Rivers. So, I mean, you need 110 for it to the frequency's been barely over 500. So, minus 139, you got to really be smart about that and not be afraid of FOMO or anything like that. Just because his minutes are limited, but it has been a good angle. Maybe PRA is the answer because I do agree that he's such a smart basketball player that if he gets into the paint and they're not guarding him, he can do that mini fadeaway
Yeah.
and that floater, or he'll kick it out to open shots if he gets covered and is defended well by maybe a big helping on his drive. So he's a guy I'm keeping an eye on. You kind of know what you're going to get, to your point, from a competitiveness and an energy standpoint.
Yeah, he's small in nature, right? Like he kind of reminds me of JJ Barea. He's better than Barea from a talent standpoint. He had mid ranges over Chet in game 2. Like he really elevates on his jumper. And the thing that we've seen throughout the playoffs, Doug, is people are challenging him on the three pointer. So he's getting 1 or 2 free open looks from 3, and he's hitting them. So I think if you're going to be on McConnell, I would include points in that, whether that's points plus rebounds or PRA or just points. I think your friend doing rebounds and assists makes a lot of sense because even though he's a small guy, he's not guarding the other team's primary ball handler. So the fact that they're hiding him on defense allows him to get the weak side rebounds. But he's such a explosive bug when it comes to points. I would always include that.
All right, so 13.5 PRA would be the look for McConnell, especially if you're like Albert and like the over. Maybe some of these are going to cash more than they did in maybe games 1 and 2. Fred Springer in the comments section, a really good sort of angle. I like this. He goes, thinks Dort under 14.5 PRA is a really good look, hasn't cleared away from home. And if Hallie is more aggressive in the paint, big if, could get into early foul trouble. And I think you raised that sort of notion about foul trouble. And Dort, yeah, he had the 5 threes in game one, came back to earth. I missed a same game parlay at like plus $3. The only thing I didn't have only thing I had that didn't hit was Dort over 1.5 made threes. He got one early, but I think this is smart, under 14.5 PRA. If you think there's going to be, fouls and more initiative by the Pacers driving, and a lot of time Dort gets switched off, so it's not just him, getting or committing the fouls. But I think that's a smart look, especially if his home road splits have been that distinct.
Oh, it's definitely distinct. He's even though he's a starter, right? He's considered a role player, and he's one of those guys that fall in they play better at home and they feed off the home crowd. And both teams know that as well. Like when Dort has it going, if he's making a three early in that first quarter, they're gonna dish it out to him another 2 or 3 times in that first quarter. Whereas on the road, when you see him like airball a three on Denver, he's not getting the ball back. So his teammates are fully aware that he plays better at home. That makes a lot of sense to me.
And just scrolling through his game log, looks like 1 is basically his ceiling for an assist. He's had a couple at 2 or 3, but usually 1 or 0. And then with rebounds, it's mostly 4. And then at home versus the road, it's 4, 2, 3. So I think this is a smart look. You're right. He is a role player. He does technically start. He's there for defensive purposes. He'll get between 30, but there's minutes or so. But betting on foul trouble, he could be. So I like that under a lot. So well done by Fred Springer. We appreciate the insight, getting the conversation going. I might even have to piggyback by tomorrow. So I think that's a good look. Before we turn the page, Albert, any of the WNBA, anything left to sort of address on this game 2, or game 3, because obviously this is your last show for this game before we have game 4 later in the week.
You know the old adage, Doug, of when we've been watching the NBA finals historically for the last 30, 40, 50 years, they always talk about game 3 being pivotal or game 5 being pivotal. Do you think the winner of game 3 is going to win the series?
No, not necessarily, because I do think it's going to come back 2-2. I think this Pacers team is pretty good.
I agree.
Not a blowout like we saw the T-Wolves when it was down 0-2 coming home and they won by 40. So I'm not looking at alt lines. But if the Pacers lose game 3, I might look at some money line, things like that for game 4. I think they're going to bounce back. I just don't think this Thunder team is, strong enough. And it's really hard to cover 3 straight games in a series. So if the Thunder handle their business, I think it takes a lot out of them. And I think the Pacers will respond on a Friday night with just 1 game turnaround. I think they'll be ready to rock. But let's get there. I mean, Pacers could be ready to rock tomorrow night and go up 2-1. That's what the Nuggets did after, stealing game 1 in OKC. So I'm not just conceding game 3 to the Thunder either. So should be awesome. I really like this matchup. And Carlisle, the more the series goes on, the more the edge is in his side of the court. Just a reminder that we are Monday through Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific, betting weekly fast break. We also have betting weekly hardball, 2 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. Pacific. And it is a basketball show. It is not just an NBA show. So we're going to be breaking down the WNBA. And we have 2 games tonight, a doubleheader on ESPN. I discussed them yesterday and beat the line movement for sure.
Nice.
Let's first talk game 1 of the doubleheader. That's the Fever at the Dream. And Caitlin Clark is officially ruled out. So yesterday the line moved from 2.5 to 4.5, but there's some steam. I know sharp money came on Atlanta. I talked to an odds maker today, and sharp money came on the under, and we're down to 160.5. So Caitlin Clark not playing tonight. They're going to go with Sydney Colson as the point guard, and the backup's likely Ari McDonald, who has just sort of gotten a medical waiver sort of thing. So they do have the quick point guards here. Sharp money on the Dream, sharp money on the under. I'm not convinced Atlanta covers this, but it should be a good bounce back spot for them after losing as a double-digit favorite against the lowly Connecticut Sun, although the Fever did that as well. I don't know if Indiana has enough horses, but I think they're much better when they have quick point guards with Colson and McDonald.
The Dream, official play for me, Doug. I love this spot for them.
Nice.
Not only all the sharp money coming in, but you mentioned a double-digit favorite losing outright. think they take care of business. I call this, you call it the wheel, I call it the trifecta. I would do Dream first quarter, first half, full game. I like them a lot in this series. Although both teams are 5-3 against the spread for the season this year, that's with Caitlin Clark in those first couple games, right? That they were able to cover against, I think, the Liberty in that first game. So I
Yeah.
like, I like Atlanta to come out. I'm gonna continue to fade Indiana without Caitlin Clark. And I know there might be a little reaction or overreaction because she was officially ruled out, and that's why you see some of the line movement. I still think Atlanta's underrated, Doug. I think this is a really good. I guess I shouldn't say really good. I think this is a good team that has the pieces to be a really good team, and so give me the Dream.
So I agree. I think the spot screams Atlanta, right? I am a little like Brittany Griner's near the end of her career. She's not as dominant as you would think. It's someone 6'7" or whatever tall she is. Brianna Jones has come back to earth with her rebounding and some of her offense, but she's crafty around the hoop if she can get the ball on the block, although it's tough to have two bigs. I love Alicia Gray. And Ryan Howard's got a lot of Carmelo Anthony in her game. So when she's on, she's really unguardable in so many ways. That's why she was so strong with the USA Olympic team in the 3-on-3 uh, sport, not the 5-on-5, team USA stuff. But this Fever team plays so much better when they have a point guard like Colson. They blew that game against the Sun because she got hurt and got her ankle rolled on, and they didn't have Ari McDonald yet. So, I mean, I don't know. Like, players like Dantas off the bench can shoot. I just wonder. I I'm not ready to go there. I respect the sharp money. I don't want any part of the dog here. I
Yeah.
think I like the under the most at 160.5. I think the Dream, even though they shoot some threes and they're analytically driven, I think they want to go in the half court set and lean on their bigs as well and put the ball in Alicia Gray's hand.
Yeah, so this is a Commissioner's Cup game, but this is also the
Mm.
third time that they're facing already this season. They both split the first two games, and what's interesting is the road team covered each of those first two games. I think that the pattern or the trend ends there. I think the home team takes care of business tonight. I mean, the players, I think the player, you mentioned the players and why we like the Dream, but I think this is more for me fading the Fever. Obviously, this
Yeah.
is not only a Caitlin Clark thing, but also when you're a player and you're a teammate of Caitlin Clark and you had expected her to come back, it's kind of a mental letdown, right? Knowing that she's not coming back tonight for a commissioner's game, a rubber match as well. So I like the Dream, and I think that their size. I know Griner is towards the end, but I think their size is really going to take over. And the Fever, to me, even though they've covered the last couple games in the half court, they still don't look right without Caitlin Clark. And I think the Dream will be able to take advantage of that.
Yeah, yeah. I don't disagree. Like I said, I'm not on the dog at all. The other game is the one that really interests me, and I gave out two plays yesterday for it, and the market's moved. I mentioned on the show, locked in under 168. It's now 163.5. And then Chicago team total, as soon as it was posted, 73.5. And I think that's still out there. Look, this is going to be a double-digit win for New York. Will they cover 17? I don't know. Jonquel Jones, highly unlikely to play, and she's a difference maker. She's their starting center, and the Sky do have size with Camila Cardoso, and then, of course, Angel Reese. I think the Liberty are not going to blow them out and put up triple digits like they did the last time they faced the Sky. So I think it's going to be like 90 or 85 points for the Liberty, not 106 or something like that. And Jonquel Jones makes them click. Now they're deep, and Johanna's coming off the bench and stuff like that. The key is I think the half court sets for the Sky without Jones, they won't be as incompetent. But I do think Chicago's offense as a whole will be incompetent. So they lost Courtney Vandersloot, their starting point guard, captain, leader. She's out for the year with a torn ACL. Haley Van Lith coming in. She just should not be starting any WNBA games. Frankly, she shouldn't be playing much at all, if at all. She's not good. She played 25 minutes on Saturday because Vandersloot got hurt in the early minutes. So I just think they're going to be completely limited and just embarrassing offensively. So I'm taking the team total under 73.5 as well. So I did 0.75 units on each. I think that's the way to play. Game under. I think the Liberty will be limited. Now they might be hurt defensively a little bit, but that means I think the Sky will score 65 points instead of 55.
Yeah, so Chicago team total under is what I'm looking at. They were already an under team without, before losing their starting point guard, Doug. They've played the Wings twice, and that's why their offensive numbers look decent. They scored 94 and
Point.
97 in those two games. But if you look at the other 5 games, they're barely hitting 70 points. I wouldn't expect them to get there against a really talented New York team. The only way that Chicago can get to that number, I would say, is New York just plays super fast. If they play really fast and they're trying to score 40 points every quarter, then yes, you're going to have the possibility of a ton of garbage points. But I'm just going to play the odds here. They've had a terrible offense outside of those 2 games against the Wings, and I will argue that it's going to continue to be terrible or even worse because they've lost their point guard in Vandersloot.
Yeah, I mean, there's a chance they run the offense through Rachel Banham, and she was someone who could bomb like deep threes. I believe she went to Minnesota for her college game. She can shoot off the dribble and stretch the defense and get hot. Kind of not Caitlin Clark, but like, version point 4 of Caitlin Clark. Like she can do some stuff, stretch the defense, logo, all that. Van Lith is not good. So I'm hoping, as someone who bet this on the under and everything, that Van Lith starts. But Banham's been a solid piece. I just don't think, and this happens in the NBA and everything, just because someone's good for like 16 minutes doesn't mean you can just double their output if they play 30. It doesn't work like that. They're not as consistent. They're not as reliable. They're not just going against the second unit defenders. They're now starting. And that's where I think this team gets really exposed. And 73.5 is a fairly low number in a WNBA game. But to your point, take away the Wings and the Sky really can't score. I mean, they had 50 something now in the last game. And now that was in a game where they lost Vandersloot 5 minutes in, and now they'll be more prepared. They'll have some structure to their offense, a game plan, but that doesn't mean they're going to all of a sudden light up the Liberty D. And the Liberty are getting Sabali back, not Satu Sabali, but her sister. That'll help defend like Angel Reese and stuff, especially, assuming Jonquel Jones is out. That's just another big they can throw. And I think if I'm Chicago, I'm going to try to avoid running, and I'm going to get the ball in my half court, maybe get them in foul trouble, get to the line, just run the offense through Cardoso. So that's why I do like the game under. I mean, it's if the team total's under and the other favorite's a 17-point favorite, I have to like the game under as well, and especially with Jonquel Jones being out. So I just think it's just going to be a sleepy game for the Liberty. I really just think they're going to kind of phone it in. Like I said, 87-60 kind of game in my eyes.
Yeah, there were a couple of things you mentioned, Doug, that I'm not going to push back, but I'm going to challenge. You said that, with Vandersloot out now, Chicago's going to be more prepared. I don't know, right? I don't know if they're going to.
Well, then they were.
I know what you were
with
saying.
An injury mid game. With an injury mid game.
But my facetiousness is saying, like, I don't even think they're even going to be more prepared, even if she plays. Like, the team is just out of sorts, and I think it's an interesting number because they had played already, right? They played the Liberty a couple weeks ago, and they actually scored 74. So the fact that the team total right now is at 73.5 is pretty interesting. But what Doug mentioned is the game script, and that's really important. The only way for the Sky to even make this competitive, and that's my challenge, is do they even want to make it competitive? Does the coaching staff even have the awareness to know that they can't run with Liberty? They can't score 90 points. So the only way to try to beat this team is the 2004 Pistons, right? 65 to 70 type game. So we'll see. We'll see. It makes a lot of sense to me. It's just the WNBA, especially those fourth quarters. I will urge people who are, jumping into the league first time this season. Those fourth quarters are like a game in and of itself, and it's hard to
Yes.
those.
Yeah, the Aces are kings of the worst like fourth quarter ATS. If they're up 20, fade them. If they're down 20, fade them. Like they just do not play well in the fourth quarter, especially if they have a big lead. Becky Hammond will put the scrubs in and go. I also brought up a theory, tongue in cheek, but I'm not going to say I won't do it. How can you lose if you just martingale team total for the Sky under every quarter? Just every quarter, just keep betting under. And if you lose, like they have no consistent scoring. Like they might put up a 24 or 27 in a quarter somehow, but then they're going to throw a 9 or a 13 point up there. And so I kind of want to do that the rest of the season, or at least track it to see how bad it's going to be.
The martingale strategy, that ends when it wins, right? So let's say you already hit the
Right.
first quarter under. Are you just done for the game?
No, you start again. This is going to be
Ah,
continuous throughout the year, so you just do it. Now, you could do it just game and, like you said, stop the rest of the game, but
it's
I
funny.
did it on Saturday when Vandersloot went out. I just bet, and I didn't. And to your point from a second ago, I didn't do the fourth quarter because that's a little dangerous in these blowouts, and they were down 30 or whatever. But still, like if their starters stink, their bench is going to stink. I really think they're limited offensively across the board. They have people playing who should not be playing.
Oh, 100%. Not you think they're limited off. They are limited offensively. There's no question about it.
Something, some food for thought. You don't want to encourage martingaling, but this is something where the way the distribution of points can be lopsided in a quarter, and the market evens out the numbers and doesn't adjust. So if like a team has a team total of 40 in the first half, right? And it's 20 for the first quarter and they put up 26, they don't do 14 for the second quarter. They do another 20. And that's where I think the opportunities are if you understand substitution patterns, particularly. But if you understand sort of the team's like regression of shooting, that the team is that bad, if they do 26 in the first quarter, they're not going to duplicate that or live up to their sort of mark in the second quarter. It's just how bad they are. So I think the Sky are just going to be one of those teams that you can do it and get away with it as long as you do small units and be careful out there.
Yeah, just for those who are wondering, the Sky scored 13, 15, 11, and 13 points in the four quarters their previous timeout. So terrible offense.
Yeah, that was when they got Vandersloot hurt in 5 minutes into the game. All right, my man, great stuff as always. I know everyone, our audience appreciates it. We're going to try to stay hot. We've been hot 6-0 or something like that so far in the props for games 1 and 2 on this show. We'll have obviously much more tomorrow with as we game 3 of the NBA Finals. The series shifts to Indiana. Betting Weekly Hardball, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. And always encourage everyone to check that out Monday through Friday. Adam the Bull was my co-host today. Tomorrow, Chris Becerro, professional bettor, will join me for this show, Betting Weekly Fast Break, 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. We'll get his thoughts on game day ahead of Game 3 of the NBA Finals. For Albert Nguyen and everyone else behind the scenes who does all the heavy lifting with the research, producers, directing, they make everything look so good. I'm Doug Kezirian. We'll see you back here tomorrow.